Good evening. Welcome to the Sunday evening update on what is now Tropical Storm Isaias here. This is trying to re-strengthen as it comes up the Florida East Coast. This has thankfully remained just offshore here. It's right about here. And the storm has continued off to the north-northwest for the better part of today and yesterday evening as the storm continues to fire off convection just off to the east of the lower level circulation. If you look at radar here, courtesy of Mark Nissenbaum, you can see what is a faint representation of a lower level circulation that is just to the south and west of what is a mid-level circulation in here that is much better defined, and that is related to, if you go back to the true color loop, what this gigantic blob of convection here is. And this is not organized convection as of right now. It has developed a mid-level circulation, but it is not stacked, and so this is not going to be able to sustain itself. We kind of talked about how this was going to just continue to fire off convection that would pull the storm's lower level circulation closer to the mid-level circulation that was going to be created by this convection. At one point, it was completely barren of convection, and that led the storm to go off to the west-northwest. But as this convection continued to fire, which was more persistent than what models forecast, the storm was able to maintain a track off to the north-northwest and has thankfully avoided the Florida coastline with what may be some damaging winds that are in the north and eastern quadrant of the system now. As this continues up the Florida East Coast, this will continue to be sheared by mid-level shear that is out of the west-southwest here, which is perpendicular to its north-northwesterly track. And this is about 30 knots of wind shear that is destroying whatever chances the system has of significant strengthening within the next 12 to 18 hours. And as this storm turns off to the north, this will eventually turn off to the north and be impacting the Carolinas here. Hurricane watches are up, extending from almost to the Outer Banks all the way south to just south of Myrtle Beach. And that area is under a hurricane watch. And this is because the system is very close to becoming a hurricane once again. This is not going to rapidly intensify anytime soon, as the shear still exists here, and this is very unfavorable dry air that is being punched into the system. But it does have a shot at intensification. We can see the winds or the clouds here across Mississippi and Alabama and Louisiana are largely out of the southwest. And as this continues up to the north, these winds will actually be more in alignment with the storm's overall track. So you'll have the storm come up out of the south-southwest, and the upper level winds will transition from being more out of the west to more out of the south, and this will align itself with the storm. We can see that in action on the GFS model here. You can see here is our storm, the 995 millibar low here that you see. This is as of right now, and you can tell the shear that is largely out of the west here. And if I put this into motion, the shear vector that is destroying the storm falls apart, and you have what is a more southwesterly flow. And this actually will help to ventilate the storm. You can see it intensifies here. It now is back to 996 millibars here on the GFS model. And this is actually going to help the convective pattern rotate to the other side of the system. So right now, you look at the true color loop, and you have what is the lower level circulation here. You have all the convection is to the east of this system. This will rotate around as this gains latitude, and so you can actually really see this on the precipitation forecast for this storm as it comes up. You can see all this rain to the immediate east of the lower level circulation staying offshore of Florida, but as this comes up, and this is expected to make landfall somewhere between Myrtle Beach and Wilmington here, and give or take about 50 miles, and that's where you'll probably get the landfall. But you can see all this rain actually rotates to the west of the track, and that is due to the baroclinic forcing of the trough that you're seeing here. This will help ventilate the convection on the western side of the storm, and this will eventually allow the storm to become, it's in a temporarily better environment before it makes landfall here. So it does have a brief time to strengthen into what may be a hurricane here. Some of the models do strengthen this into a mid-grade Category 1 hurricane here and before it comes ashore, but it will actually, due to the baroclinic forcing here of the outflow continuing to help aid the convection and force the convection into existence, due to this jet streak and the entrance zone or entrance region that this is going to be in, this will likely be able to sustain what is going to be heavy rain here and likely heavy winds as well. If you look at the precipitation, that configuration of the storm, you can see it comes ashore here, but look at where all the heavy rain is. This is on the western side of the system, as I explained earlier, and this remains to have very heavy rain all the way up into Pennsylvania and New England, and even up into New York and later into Vermont. This comes up and is essentially affecting the entire Mid-Atlantic and New England coastline here, and also the region of New England inland, because the storm does track very close to and mostly onshore here. This pretty much goes right through North Carolina, and on this particular run, if you look at the 3-day cone for the National Hurricane Center, you can see all these tropical storm warnings lining the Florida coast all the way up into the Outer Banks. Then you have tropical storm warnings lining the northern half of the Outer Banks here and the entire Chesapeake Bay region, and then Delmarva and the New Jersey coastline and into Long Island here. So this is a very heavily populated area here that is under tropical storm watches. These will become warnings as this storm progresses. This is 36 hours out, 2 p.m. Tuesday. So right now they're tropical storm watches, but you do need to be preparing for what may be a little bit stronger of a storm than what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. There is a hurricane watch here for a reason. This storm does have a good shot at becoming what is a hurricane here. And really that's about a 5-mile-per-hour difference between what it's at now, 70 miles per hour, and what it should be at if it is a hurricane, 74 miles per hour or 75 miles per hour. But keep in mind that the main threat here is largely flooding. And whether it be inland flooding, as you can see, all of these yellows and oranges are above 4 inches of rain, and in the oranges you have above 6 inches of rain here. So this is a lot of rain in the mid-Atlantic states. And there's also surge flooding here. You can see the peak surge, experimental surge graphic by the National Hurricane Center here, depicting 2 to 4 feet of storm surge as this comes ashore near Cape Fear and Edisto Beach. Somewhere in here, the peak surge will happen, and you can see if you are in a flood zone, you do need to get to higher ground. This surge will come in pretty quickly, as this storm will be moving pretty swiftly as it moves along with the trough. And you can see 1 to 3 foot water rises in the entire Chesapeake Bay region and the Outer Banks and most of the coast of North Carolina here. Really the only place in the Carolinas or the North Carolina coastline is Cape Fear southward that gets the 2 to 4 feet storm surge. But this is storm surge, and you do need to be in higher ground as this comes ashore here. This is going to be moving pretty fast, but will be dropping a significant amount of rain. And that's why there are flash flood watches, I think, for most all of these areas that are highlighted in yellow. And the flash flood potential for these areas is pretty high. And if you are in a flash flood prone area or low-lying area, please do be careful as this comes through. This is going to be dropping a lot of rain in a very short amount of time, so please do be wary. Also, as this is a tropical storm, there are tropical storm force gusts that can, shut off power for you. If you are in the tropical storm watch area, expect these to become warnings as the storm comes up. And this will have an increasingly large wind field here. There's tropical storm watches even for inland in Philly, and so don't just think that if you're not on the coast you can be okay. This whole region will be impacted by Isaias, and as this comes up, you can expect power outages and branches and tree damage and maybe minor structural damage as this comes through. This is a tropical storm. This is not, your average thunderstorm here. This is going to be blowing through, and this is going to be pretty significant for this time of year in this region. So please do be prepared for all hazards as this comes up. This is not going to be a walk in the park for the Mid-Atlantic or the Chesapeake Bay Area or New England, etc. So I'm going to leave you with the True Color Loop, courtesy of tropicaltidbits.com. And as always, refer to the National Hurricane Center, and I'll have all the local National Weather Service offices that are pertinent to the areas along the East Coast and inland that are going to be experiencing flash flooding. Please refer to your local officials as well, and watch local government for potential road closures as flash flooding happens, and as evacuation orders depending on where you live, and watch and pay attention to where your flood zone is. And as always, be very safe. Thanks for watching.